Hello, this is Jason Sciscoe again here at triumphtoday.org. Thank you for clicking on this question in our series of overcoming the spirit of Jezebel. The question comes now that we want to discuss: does the abuse in someone's past have anything to do with the spirit of Jezebel working through them, or does this make them have a vulnerability towards this spirit? And the answer to that question is yes. Yes, a lot of times people that have been abused will manifest the spirit of Jezebel. Here is the essence of this spirit. The spirit of Jezebel comes as a reaction to the abuse of authority. If that is authority in the home, that is authority in government, if that's authority in civil servants, if that's authority in the church, wherever there is authority, someone that abuses that authority and violates somebody else or abuses somebody else, takes advantage of somebody else, then the spirit of Jezebel comes and rides in on that. Let me give you an example of a vision that I had when God was teaching me about the spirit of Jezebel. It took me more than 6 years of battling this spirit before it finally moved into a teaching mode. So I'm hoping that these lessons will accelerate the teaching and you won't have to wait a long time to be able to get a grasp on what's happening. But here's an example of how the spirit of Jezebel gets in when someone's abused. I saw this vision of a young girl who was in a house. She may have been 8, 10 years old, something like this. The parents went out and left her in the care of her uncle. The uncle was a good man. I could perceive that from the vision. But the spirit of Jezebel came into this house and stirred up this man, put thoughts in his mind of abuse and perversity, and said, you are alone in this house with this girl and no one would ever know, etc. And he went into her room and he abused her and raped her. And then he left the house and left her alone. And I saw the spirit go after him and make him feel completely like a loser and shamed him. And of course, he did give in to this, so he did deserve, in some sense, a spirit of condemnation to be upon him. But she echoed that so deeply in his mind that he was despairing even of his life because he realized that, that he had failed. Then the spirit goes back to the girl, and this is what the spirit says: vow that you will never be vulnerable again. It was because you trusted. It was because you opened your spirit to love your uncle. It was because you believed your parents that said it's okay for you to stay in the house with him. You'll be fine. It was people in authority that neglected you and that abused you and put you into this position. So you must vow right now to take care of yourself, and that you will never be vulnerable again, and that you will never trust ever, ever again. And I see the girl with her face is red and the tears are coming down, and she says, I vow it, I swear it, I will never be abused again. I will never be hurt again. No man will ever do this to me again. I will never, ever, never, never. And she's angry and the rage. And then I see that spirit go straight into her personality. And the Lord speaks to me and he says, to the degree that they vow, that's how deeply this spirit gets embedded into them. And it wraps itself around their personality, you see. And their thoughts become interchangeable. They don't know the difference between their own thoughts and Jezebel's thoughts. Their emotions and this spirit influencing their emotions. And then their emotions become freezed at the day of their abuse because they close themselves off that they will never trust again. And because they're never going to trust again, that means the walls are up so high, no one's going to get in there to help them to forgive and to help them to get healed. So that part of them is emotionally at the age of their abuse. The rest of themselves moves on, and they mature and they grow up and they become quote-unquote normal human beings and live a quote-unquote normal life. But anytime you touch that emotion, it's just like that spider coming, that web is triggered and there's that spirit, and it shows up. Because it's defending that territory, because that's its inroad. That's its way of manipulating that person. So the abuse is directly involved here. And it also limits the processing in the mind, because the emotions are kept at that immature age. So abuse does have an effect here. Now, I've seen adults that have been abused. There have been pastors that have, overstepped their boundaries. There's been, of course, civil servants that have failed people. And it's that trust that gets broken. And when someone's trust is broken, then it's very difficult to enter back into the equation, to enter trust back into that equation. That's why the Bible says it's harder to win a man offended than it is to take a city. Because once there's that offense there, it's really hard to change their mind and to get them to get out of that. And so the enemy uses that as a defense mechanism to stay rooted in the person, and then they keep doing their damage and doing their manipulation, and they feel justified in doing it. So the answer to this is the cross. The only way out of this is to show them the perfect man. When they see the perfect man who had perfect authority, we notice something in the Scriptures. It's amazing. Do you realize that there's not one woman that did anything evil against Jesus? You cannot find